Paano isahan ang diabetes at iba pang related na sakit in 3 simple steps? If you have problems with diabetes or managing your blood sugar, kailangan alam nyo ito. So, first, para sa mga walang diabetes, diabetes ay isa pong sakit na yung full name nito is diabetes mellitus. It is actually coming from the word, na Greek word related to sugar in urine or sweet urine. And with diabetics nga, ang isa sa pinaka-common manifestations nila is yung pag-ihi ng marami. So, there is polyuria, and then there's also polyphagia. Parati silang kumakain. Poly is marami, phagia yung pagkain. And then also, there is increased thirst. Parati silang nauuhaw. Bakit merong ganito? This is because kapag ang isang taong may diabetes ay na-diagnose na, ito yung kondisyon na kung saan yung blood sugar nila sa katawan ay sobrang taas na. At kapag sobrang taas na yung blood sugar sa katawan, hindi na ito ma-accommodate ng mga cells, and ito ay nagre-release, they can get stuck in our blood system, in our bloodstream, or pwede rin itong mag-overflow sa ating ihi. And that is not just a problem. Kapag parating mataas yung blood sugar ng isang tao, marami itong related complications. Nakaka-damage ito ng atay, nakaka-damage ito ng kidneys. Eventually, it can lead into build up ng cholesterol sa ating mga ugat, nakakabara ng puso, and it can even related to sudden death, say for example, from stroke or other problems in our body. Ganun po yung nagagawa ng diabetes. Nakakabulag nga ito. And for those na meron bago pa lang, meron silang nararamdamang mga pins and needle sensation. Parang namamanhid yung kanilang mga kamay o di kaya yung kanilang mga paa, and that is because of glucose toxicity na nangyayari sa nerves natin. That is what we call as peripheral neuropathy. And if yung sobrang sugar ay nakaka-damage sa peripheral nerves, mas nakaka-damage din ito sa ating utak. That is why dementia, especially Alzheimer's disease, is now termed as type 3 diabetes, because it is like coming from too much sugar intolerance ng ating utak na for the longest time, parati na lang nagpo-fuel or nag-overload ng glucose. Yes, glucose is important sa metabolism ng cells natin, pero what we fail to realize is that these glucose, we don't need so much because mabubuhay kasi tayo nang hindi kumakain diretsa ng glucose o yung carbohydrates. Because kung meron mang kailangang carbohydrates yung ating katawan, it's only very minimal yung totoong obligate glucose-dependent cells sa ating katawan. Karamihan sa ating katawan, more than 75% of our body, kayang-kayang mabuhay. It can be fat adapted. Kaya niyang mabuhay na yung kanyang source of energy is coming from other sources and not just glucose. Pwede itong mabuhay galing sa fatty acids, pwede itong mabuhay galing sa ketone bodies, at marami pang ibang contributor sa formation ng ATP or adenosine triphosphate. Yun yung pinaka-energy, pinaka-battery na ginagamit natin sa ating katawan, and that is not, should not be dependent on glucose. Kaya nga, yung mga diabetics type 1, yung type 1 is yung mga bata na mostly mga bata na kung saan yung kanilang pancreas ay hindi na nagsisecrete ng insulin. So yung nangyayari, yung kanilang katawan hindi na maipasok yung sugar sa loob ng cells kasi nga kailangan yung insulin para maipasok ito. However, eventually, they are being managed as insulin injections. And yes, it can help. Nakakatulong yon para maipasok. Pero alam nyo ba na nagkakaroon na ngayon ng type 2 diabetes superimposed in type 1 diabetics patients. Ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon na rin sila ng insulin resistance because of too much insulin load. And yung too much insulin load na yon, nangangailangan din because they are actually consuming too much sugar. When you have high demand for insulin because of high sugar intake, the complications of diabetes hindi lang natitigil sa sobra ng sugar. Ang complication ng diabetes ay related din sa sobra-sobrang insulin sa katawan. type 2 diabetics or yung mga adult onset diabetes, ito yung mga lumaki na pareho natin, normal, walang problema sa pancreas, pero eventually, nagkakaroon ng problema because either na exhaust na yung pancreas, halos hindi na makagawa, o di kaya yung mga cells hindi na sensitive sa insulin. At kapag ang cells na ito hindi na sensitive sa insulin, magkakaroon ng insulin build-up and sugar build-up. So, dalawa na ang magbi-build up ng ating damaging na mga particles na nasa ating bloodstream. Insulin, when too much, can be carcinogenic, can be tumorigenic because it is a anabolic hormone. It is an anabolic hormone na nagpro-promote ng growth and proliferation. At sa mga adults na buong tao na, hindi na mga bata, hindi na developing child, they don't actually need so much insulin. Konting-konting insulin lang, we can live more better. We can live better, we can live healthier, we can live a life that is actually less dependent on medications because when insulin is always too much, ito ay magpupunta sa tinatawag nating insulin resistance, yun yung IR, and it is linked to metabolic syndrome, yung paglaki ng tiyan, pagtaas ng visceral fats, pagkasira ng kidneys, pagkakaroon ng tumors, pagkakaroon ng obesity. Yung iba, wala ngang obesity, pero sobrang taas naman ng mga blood lipids, yung tawag nating dyslipidemia, yung triglycerides at yung VLDL ay sobrang taas. So, paano natin isahan yung diabetes? Number one first, alamin kung bakit nagkaroon ng diabetes. So, number one root cause of diabetes. Generally, on type 2 diabetics and for type 1 naman, kung bakit nagkakaroon ng parating pagtaas ng blood sugar, very simple. Look at the sugar in your food. So, I know sa mga diabetics, very careful na when it comes to their sugar consumption. Hindi na sila naglalagay ng asukal sa nilang kape, hindi na sila naglalagay ng asukal sa kanilang juice o di kaya sa kanilang kung ano-ano man nilang niluluto, pero hindi pa rin bumababa yung kanilang blood sugar. Bakit? Dahil na hindi nila nalaman na yung sugar pala o yung asukal ay hindi lang actually sa asukal makikita. It can also come from kanin. Kasi po, yung isang cup ng kanin, katumbas niyan ay 10 kutsaritang asukal when it comes to net carbohydrates. So, hindi ka nga nag-asukal sa iyong kape, pero nung nag-almusal ka, 3 rice naman. So, katumbas nun, 30 teaspoons of white sugar. O di kaya, nag-cut down ka na sa rice, isang rice na lang. Pero pagkadating ng alas 10, kumain ka ng 2 pandesal. Yung 2 pandesal na yon, 10 kutsaritang asukal pa rin yon. And what else? Even root crops, kahit po kamote, kahit patatas, those are still considered as starch. At yung mga starch na ito, when you remove the fiber, what will remain would be the starch na kapag na-broken down will just lead into glucose. At ganun pa rin yun. Isang patatas na ganyan, katumbas niya, nasa 5 to 8 teaspoons of white sugar. Ganun po katrami yon. And for all we know, parati tayong malakas kumain ng kung hindi man kanin, hindi man tinapay, o di kaya patatas, at ano pa, yung paborito ng lahat, saging. So, saging na saba, yung niluluto, yung hilaw, yung green, yung akala natin very healthy. Yes, yung green na hilaw na saba, pwede yung maging healthy, pero kainin mo ng hilaw, wag mong lutuin. Pero kung lulutuin mo, yung isasaing mo, that becomes regular starch. But if it's raw, as in plain raw, that is resistant starch. So, pwede mong kainin yon. But mind you, kung hindi ka sanay kumain yan, baka magkaroon ka ng indigestion at baka sumama yung tiyan nyo. But generally, when it comes to blood sugar, hindi ito pwede kung ito ay luto na, kahit hilaw pa siya na sinaing, most especially yung ripe na banana, including other fruits like mango at kung ano-ano pa mga prutas. Merong mga fruits na low carb, but to simplify things, better avoid lang muna yung fruits in general because they are composed of glucose and fructose. At yung glucose is diretsong nakakapagpataas ng ating blood sugar at yung fructose naman is actually linked into development of insulin resistance because of its inflammatory effect sa liver. So nakakapamaga yung sobra-sobrang fructose, yung natural sugar na nasa fruits, and especially the processed fructose coming from high fructose corn syrup. Yung mga syrup na binibigay sa inyo if ever you separate or if ever you add to your milk tea, to your fraps, to your drinks. So, kailangan alamin muna kung ano yung nagpapataas ng inyong blood sugar in the first place for you to have diabetes. And when you cut those down, you will see overnight in just a matter of one day. For the first time, yun yung nasasabi ng mga nakapanood ng mga first-timers na nanonood sa atin, na yung sinubukan nila, yung life without rice, yung life without carbs, instantly, in one day, bumaba yung kanilang blood sugar. Never before seen after 2 decades, 25 years, 30 years of taking medications and monitoring, never nilang na-consider na kunin yung mga pagkaing nakakapagpataas ng kanilang blood sugar. And when they remove it, parang magic. But it's not magic. It is simple science. It's just that hindi natin ito tiningnan in this perspective. That is why we are doing this education, this health education drive para at least alam niyo na hindi lang basta asukal yung kailangan nating iwasan, kundi yung other foods din na nakakapagpataas ng ating blood sugar that is not related to pure white or brown sugar, but pati na rin po sa ating mga usual staples sa ating araw-araw, which would include kanin, tinapay, noodles, pasta, quinoa, couscous, balsamic rice, red rice, brown rice, patatas, ube, ano pa ba? Marami pang root crops, kamote, saging, lahat ng yon. So, pagkatapos niyong malaman kung paano ito pababain, paano kunin yung mga pagkaing nakakapagpataas ng inyong blood sugar, kailangan alam nyo rin kung ano yung pwede nyong kainin. So, generally, kapag nawala na yung bulk ng iyong kinakain, hindi pwedeng wala na kayong kakainin. So, number 2 would be to know what foods to eat. So, this one, number 1, which foods to eliminate, and the second one, which foods to also consume. So, kung ano yung i-consume ninyo, pwede pa rin kayong kumain ng carbohydrates. Huwag kayong mag-alala. It's just that these carbohydrates are what we call as non-starchy carbohydrates. So, these are the green leafy vegetables, yung mga pipino, yung mga dahon-dahon, pechay, cabbage, lettuce, tapos yung mga locals naman, malunggay, alugbate, at marami pang iba. Kahit anong talbos ng kamote, talbos ng sili, at marami pang iba, you can have that safely in your meals. And this is, I think, good news, especially sa mga papa dyan, sa mga daddy dyan, tito, na mahilig kumain ng karne, na sobrang tagal nang hindi kumakain ng karne. Meat, even red meat, beef is actually considered one of the most nutrient-dense food sa mundo. Kailangan lang i-maximize natin yung benefit ng pagkain ito without eating too much carbohydrates together with it. In fact, pwede nga kainin yung meat alone. Kung gustong kumain ng steak, kumain ng steak. Walang mashed potato. Definitely, walang kanin, at kahit pa toasted bread or sliced bread or French bread pa yan, wala na. Just plain salt and pepper, okay na yon. So, those two things, you know what to eat and you know what to avoid. And lastly, when it comes naman to your medication adjustment, know that your medications, hindi yan pwedeng bigla-bigla mo lang kunin. You have to consult properly. You have to know, especially sa mga nag-i-inject na ng insulin, because there is a proper way to compute kung magkano lang yung insulin na kakailanganin based on your food intake and also based on your pancreatic health. Kung meron ka pang residual pancreatic na secretions, nagpo-function pa yung pancreas ninyo, then you might not need so much insulin anymore. So, meron niyang dahan-dahan, step by step, kung paano yan kunin. And of course, when in doubt, always work with your trusted physician. Yung importante dito, you know now what foods to avoid, and you can even do it safely. Kailangan safe yung paggawa ninyo because you don't want to go into a dangerous hypoglycemia. Yung hypoglycemia, babagsak yung inyong blood sugar, and it's mostly not because of eating low carb, but it is because of eating low carb without proper adjustment, dose adjustment sa inyong gamot. Because when you do low carb, your need for those medications is actually not the same. Hindi na pareho. Kung noon, tatlo yung gamot na iniinom o nasa 40 units of insulin, but insulin computations is different. And generally, kung walang specific dietary recommendations para sa inyo, you were just told to say, for example, just eat anything you want, just inject this insulin kapag ganito yung result mo, then most likely those are just standard, hindi tailored fit na computation ng insulin. Because generally, yung insulin computation, especially sa mga independent na, is half niyan para sa iyong basal insulin needs, para sa iyong maintenance lang sa araw-araw. But the other half of that is actually covering for the expected carbohydrate na kakainin nyo sa araw-araw. At alam nyo ba kung magkano yung expected carbohydrate na binibilang na allowable or parang advised among diabetics? It's 60 grams of carbohydrate. Not in a day, but per meal. Yes, 60 grams of carbohydrate per meal yung binibigay na allowance for diabetic. So, no wonder, hindi talaga yan mawawala yung pangangailangan ng medications because you are already giving that sugar load. 60 grams and then ilan pa? 3 big meals and 2 snacks. That's 5 meals kasi nga nasa small frequent meals yung advice. That will give you to how much? To 300 grams of sugar load in a day. Alam nyo ba na at any point in your time, kapag yung blood sugar mo na nasa normal range of 70 to 100, alam nyo ba kung sasalain yung buong sugar, yung buong glucose sa inyong katawan during that time, yung like say for example 80 grams per DL, alam nyo ba kung magkano equivalent niyan? That is only equivalent to 4 grams of sugar in your whole blood system. Imagine, 4 grams lang yung kailangan only during that time and you are loading with 60 grams 5 times a day. That's 300 grams. So no wonder, hindi talagang babagsak yung blood sugar when it comes to that. So, don't follow me. You can test it on your own. Meron naman kayong mga glucometer dyan. You can check right after. Mostly kasi yung ginagawa when you do your monitoring, pinapacheck sa inyo 2 hours after your blood sugar, after you eat. So this time, I will challenge you. After you eat, say for example, a rice or banana, o di kaya pandesal, check nyo after 15 minutes, after 30 minutes, after 1 hour, after 2 hours. Kahit masakit, kahit pa sabihin na natin magastos sa glucometer, sa strips, pero tingnan nyo lang. Because if you will check after 2 hours, you will already miss the spike in your blood sugar. Because what you will see, kasi nga nag-i-insulin kayo or marami kayong inom ng gamot para maging sensitive yung katawan natin sa insulin, para ma-force yung insulin na tanggapin yung ating katawan, na tanggapin ang katawan natin, then you can already miss that spike. Pagka-check nyo, it's normal. Nasa 110 na lang, nasa 120 na lang, pero na-miss mo yung period ng 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and 1 hour na nag-shoot up pala 250, 300, and you can see how that starch, how that food item really impacts your blood, and yung mga complications ng diabetes is not just related to blood sugar spike, it's not just related to blood sugar alone, but the frequent spikes and trough, yung pagtataas at pagbabagsak ng blood sugar, that is generating a lot of radical oxygen species. So those are ROS. Those are the one that's causing oxidative stress sa ating cells, and that leads into inflammation, and inflammation yung kapag meron ng pamamaga sa ating ugat, sa ating cells, it serves as like magnet for all of these inflammatory components, at yun yung nakakasira mismo ng ating katawan. If yung blood vessels natin merong inflammation, dun na nagdidikit-dikit yung mga cholesterol. Kaya kapag maraming kinakaing sugar together with fats, those are the worst combination. But eating proteins and fats alone, without carbs and without inflammatory foods, yung mga cholesterol sa ating katawan, especially the HDL and just the LDL, they will just float smoothly. Hindi sila mag-adhere, hindi sila magkakaroon ng attachment or build up in the blood vessels because wala ngang inflammation na nagmamagnet sa kanila to stick to that. So that is why eating proteins, eating fats, and non-starchy vegetables is your best bet when it comes to consuming the right foods to lower down your blood sugar and also lower down your overall inflammation in the body. At alam nyo ba, kahit kumain kayo ng taba, hindi magkakaroon ng sobra-sobrang increased fat build up sa inyong katawan, specifically the triglycerides and the VLDL, because yung primary driver ng triglyceride formation and VLDL formation, yung mga totoong bad cholesterol, are actually inflammation and also insulin. So it's insulin and inflammation. And sometimes before insulin and inflammation, because I know very few cases na kahit naka-low carb na, meron pa rin ganito, but they are under a lot of stress. A lot of stress, increased cortisol can still increase your blood sugar and eventually still increase your insulin and still can drive the increase of these bad cholesterol. But when you do low carb the right way, you also lessen your stress, your body will just naturally burn these fats. Gagamitin lang niya yung mga tabang ito para ito ay magamit as energy. But of course, as always, this is just for educational purposes, para lang mapukaw yung inyong isipan at makita ninyo na maybe there is something that needs improvement when it comes to our food intake. And if you have personal questions, you can always consult with your trusted physician or the low carb doctors in our community. We have Doc Brian Castillo, we have Doc Fee Atencio, Doc Mike Atencio, we have Doc Suzette Encarnado, Doc Iggy Agbayani. We also have Doc Iris Radev in Canada at marami pang iba. If you are in the US and in Australia, mas marami ng low carb practitioners dyan. And I hope you will become a part of our Life Without Rice group for food inspirations. Kung hindi nyo ma-imagine kung paano kumain ng walang kanin, every day you will be inspired with the amazing menus and mga preparations ng mga normal na Pinoy, everyday Pinoy meals that you can enjoy both based in the Philippines and abroad. And for questions, inspirations, and motivation, meron tayong low carb feasting and fasting community. And for guidance, for a structured learning, if medyo kalat para sa inyo yung mga videos natin, we have a masterclass wherein video pa rin yung ating mga lessons, but this is tailored fit into a learning module. Merong module, merong topics, it is a course. Para siyang merong course outline so that you will fully grasp and appreciate kung ano yung natural healing, kung ano yung root cause medicine, and you can see for yourself how you think you can also maximize your healing, your improvement just by altering your food intake, knowing what to eat, knowing when to eat, knowing what to avoid, knowing what to add, knowing what to remove, and knowing what is most essential. So, yan lang muna for now. I hope you were able to grasp the three major things kung paano pwedeng isahan ang diabetes at ang related pang mga sakit. Because even if there are already complications, majority of those can still be helped. Either mare-reverse o di kaya pwede itong matigil yung pag-progress ng mga complications na ito. Habang mabuhay, walang imposible, pero pwede kayong magkaroon ng pag-asa, but first you have to do something about it. So know which foods are increasing your blood sugar, so which foods to eliminate, and then which foods to eat, and then lastly, how to properly know on your dose adjustment if you are already taking medications para parating safe pa rin tayo. Hindi tayo basta-basta lang papasok na hindi natin alam kung ano yung ating papasukin. So thank you very much everybody. Yun lang muna for now. I'll see you again in our next video. If you wish to know more, just message our admins in LCF Masterclass by yours truly, Josephine Grace Chua Rojo MD. Maraming salamat po. Have a good day and have a great week ahead. Thank you.
Kapag nasusobrahan ang pag-stimulate sa master hormone na ito, ang nangyayari, we go more into fat storage. Kapag naman hindi natin masyadong nasi-stimulate or iniistorbo itong hormone na ito, we go more into fat burning. And so, parehas na strategies na ito are rooted on addressing that root cause, this master regulator hormone. Tinatawag ko po siyang si boss insulin.
Karamihan sa mga Filipino food, low carb naman talaga. Tapos yung iba sa kanila, konting tweak na lang, low carb na yun. Typical Pinoy meal, ulam plus rice. Alam mo ba, kapag tinanggal mo yung rice, low carb na yun.
Sa experience ko, mas magastos po ang high carbs kasi dati kumakain po ako ng 6 times a day. Lunch, breakfast, dinner, tsaka 3 merienda as compared nung naglo-low carbs na po ako na 1 o 2 beses na ako kumakain.
Iniiwas tayo nito sa mga karamdaman na nangangailangan ng pangmatagalang gamutan para sa ganon ng ating mga inipon ay hindi maubos para sa pagbili ng mga gamot na habang buhay nating iinumin, kundi atin itong magamit upang mas ma-enjoy natin ang ating oras kasama ang ating pamilya.
Ayon sa mga eksperto sa larangan ito, the road to diabetes started 10 years prior to diagnosis. At may kinalaman dito ang insulin resistance.
Tayo naghahanap ng pagkain sa pamamagitan ng hunting and gathering, na kung saan naghahanap tayo ng hayop or bunga ng mga puno't halaman na meron. Samantalang sa panahon ngayon, tayo ay nasa tinatawag na instant food period, na kung saan ang ating pagkain ay nanggagaling sa ating supermarket or grocery stores.
Pagdating naman sa sustainability, hindi natin alalahanin yan sa low carb diet. Kasi unang-una, pag sinabing low carb diet, hindi siya yung sinasabi nating usual na diet na gugutumin tayo at maraming ipagbabawal sa atin. Hindi ganun sa low carb diet. And sa pagdating naman sa food sources, pwede natin kunin yan sa bakuran natin, madali natin i-prepare pansarili natin, and nutritionally, hindi natin aalalahanin na magkaroon ng micronutrient deficiencies.
The low carbohydrate lifestyle gives our body the freedom from all of the hardships we give to it when we are following the standard diet. When it is coupled with intermittent fasting, this helps the body to heal, thereby reversing insulin resistance, thus improving our metabolic health, which encompasses, but not limited to, having better blood sugar control, lower blood pressure, and decrease in body weight.
Marami ng pagkakataon ngayon na nagpapatunay na maraming health benefits ang low carb or keto diet. Bukod sa pwedeng bumaba ang timbang mo, pwede ka pang gumaling sa mga sakit mo, and then eventually, pwedeng mag-improve ang overall health mo. So, if you know how to do it right, wala ka namang dapat katakutan sa low carb or keto diet.
Mahirap baguhin ang lifestyle ng mga Pinoy, and it's because of yung source of information. Okay, from the government, from the experts, from the media, etc. Kapag mali kasi yung source of info Of course, kapag natutunan ng mga tao yon, mali yung info, mali na rin yung gagawin nila. So I believe, ang pinaka mahirap is yung source of info. Dapat legit, hindi fake news.
Marami po sa atin ang hindi kumakain ng taba ng nyog, taba ng baboy, taba ng baka dahil daw ito ay sanhi ng sakit sa puso. Sa ating low carb conference kung darating na July ay pag-usapan natin na walang basehan ang mga yan at sa makatuwid ay makakatulong pa ito ng malaki sa ating kalusugan.
Ano naging epekto ng low carbs sa physical athletic performance? Number 1, na-achieve ko ang race weight ko na mas lalo akong gumaan para tumakbo, mas bumilis. Mas lalong naging energetic and yung endurance ko mas maba. At lastly, mas mabilis ang recovery ng mga muscles.
Bawal daw ang magpagutom lalo na sa mga taong may sakit. But what if I told you that if you consistently eat just 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, you can reverse obesity, hypertension, or even diabetes.
Ang low carb po ay hindi lang para sa mga may sakit. Actually, mas makaka-benefit dito ang mga taong wala pang sakit dahil meron silang opportunity na maiwasan ang mga lifestyle diseases tulad ng cancer, diabetes, high blood at marami pang iba. Kaya kasama ng ibang dalubhasa sa bansa when it comes to low carb nutrition and fasting lifestyle, we hope to see you this coming July in the first ever Low Carb Philippines 2021 Convention. See you!
July!
July.